This is Jerome Corsi, and today is Monday, March 27th, 2023, and I've decided to come back to podcasting and to writing books. After the Mueller investigation, you'll recall they wanted to put me in prison because they thought I lied. I was never indicted. Beat Mueller, closed down the Mueller investigation. I've decided to take a little break, and now I'm back. I mean, my wife was very concerned about me returning actively, but I think that situation's now being resolved. And at any rate, I'm back. And we're going to do daily podcasts, and I'm going to be writing actively, books. I'm also going to be doing some writing on the Gateway Pundit, and I also do American Thinker. I've been publishing there as well. So I'm re-engaging. I think we're at a critical point in our politics. The next year or two are going to be absolutely critical of whether or not we have freedom left. And I've decided to stop saying I was going to be retired. I'm not retired at all any longer. I'm back. And I have a new producer. Chris, you want to say hello? If you can in a minute.
I'm right here. Yes, I'm right here. Thank you, Jerry.
I think we're going to do fine together. We are planning to be a very ambitious show. We've got new sponsors. The website is thetruthcentral.com. That's my new website, thetruthcentral.com. And we'll be posting new articles there on a continuous basis. It'll be, in a sense, like a accumulator of the news. And we will be then in the show discussing a variety of topics that we're covering. I cover a wide range of topics, all the way from politics, economics. We're going to be dealing with cryptocurrency, climate, a variety of issues. And I'm going to be introducing to you some new things on longevity medicine. And I've been in telemedicine. I'm getting more active in telemedicine, and we'll be discussing that as well. Now, to start out today, I want to start out with the economic crisis. And the first article I want to focus on is one that has been published in Zero Hedge. It comes from Lance Roberts, who is in realinvestmentadvice.com. And basically what he's saying, and I think it's a very important article, is that this is not a temporary phenomenon with the banks. What's going on with the banks, you see it in the Silicon Valley Bank. And then over the weekend, we had a major crisis with Deutsche Bank. Of course, Credit Suisse has been taken over by UBS. That's huge. These are two of the biggest banks in Switzerland. And part of the problem, I'm going to try to give it to you simply. It's a complex issue again. And if you'll recall, I was covering actively the 2008, 2009 crash of the banks in the subprime mortgage crisis. Well, what's happening is the Federal Reserve has had this policy of quantitative easing, which means Federal Reserve has been buying treasury bills in massive quantities. And that essentially, through the Obama years, kept interest rates at zero. Well, to sell these bonds, the Federal Reserve bought trillions of dollars of them. We bought our own debt. And the Federal Reserve had banks buy these bonds, the treasury bonds. And what's happening is that these bonds are not today worth very much money because interest rates are rising and continue to rise. We had an interest rate rise even last week. Now, the key element here is to understand that this is not temporary. This is going to be happening, I believe, across the board to regional banks. And what's under move right now, the larger story, is that the banks, central banks around the world, are going to compete for central bank digital currencies. Federal Reserve wants to go to a digital currency, which I think should be very frightening. It'll be complete control of our money. You'll be able to monitor every cent you spend. But the point is, regional banks are going to go out of the picture. The regional banks are going to fail. And many of the bigger banks are going to fail because their assets no longer are sufficient to sustain their liabilities. And with the amount of massive debt we have throughout the economy, both banks and private individuals and corporations, we're at a historically high level of debt. We're going to be in a crisis, I think, that will lead to a very massive recession. Peter Schiff is out today. He's one of the top investment advisors and saying essentially that this is going to be a very, very deep recession. As I said, I'm writing a new series of books. Let me show you the cover of one. This I just submitted. We just finalized this last week. This is the one on gold and silver. And it's going to be out. If Chris, we can find the cover to put it up, that'd be good, because it's just going into print right now. But the book is predicting, started writing it 6 months ago, but I am predicting a massive economic decline, which we're about to go into. I think it's going to be a global crash, and it's going to create an historic gold rush. I wrote this book with Dean Heskin. Dean is the CEO of Swiss America. SwissAmerica.com is one of our sponsors. And you can navigate our page. You'll see that Swiss America, if we pull down the sponsor link, is still offering the silver dollar offer for just about what they're worth in silver for new investors as an introductory offer. And if you want to support the program, the way to do it is to link to our sponsors, explore what they have, and see if it's of interest to you. But what I'm saying is we're going to see gold possibly double in price in the near future. And this is an issue I intend to follow very closely, because as gold doubles, we're going to see a massive gold rush. Central banks have been buying gold massively. Russia's bought an enormous amount of gold. And this has been, again, going to undermine the ability of the big gold markets to control the price of gold. One of the primary theses of this book I've written with Dean Heskin is that every time we get an economic downturn, it happened in the 70s with Jimmy Carter. We had the OPEC oil crisis, which led to stagflation. That was the first stagflation we had. Economic stagnant growth and inflation. We're going to have that again. And with the stagflation, you're going to find that businesses, individuals, the economy is going to collapse. But yet there's going to be shortages, which will push up inflation. We're going to be having increasing inflation. I think double-digit inflation. At the same time, we've got stagnant economic growth and a crisis in the banks. There's going to be a combination of what we went through in the 1970s and in 2008, 2009, which ushered in Barack Obama, the bank crisis from the subprime loans. When the banks collapsed, Lehman Brothers failed, Bear Stearns went out of business, and the derivatives, which are a very sophisticated form of investment, are going to be impacted again. Now, we'll be explaining all these things, but I want to alert you that one of my major themes here is that we're going to be suffering a massive economic decline followed by a massive global recession. Now, secondly, another article I want to cover today is this John Kerry article. This comes from Gateway Pundit. And John Kerry is now saying over the weekend, my favorite John Kerry, you recall in 2004, I co-authored with John O'Neill the Swiftboat book, Unfit for Command, which we reviewed John Kerry's less than honorable service in Vietnam. I think that book was one that did influence the 2004 election, and Kerry was not elected president. Now he's still causing massive damage internationally. He wants to have executive orders in which the Biden administration is going to impose its climate agenda through this attempt to do this Inflation Reduction Act, which has nothing to do with inflation reduction. And Kerry's saying we're going to get new restrictions. They want us to quit using gas stoves. They want our washers and dryers to be less effective, to use less energy. And they basically are going to mandate these cars be redesigned, etc. Now, again, I have a book on this. I'm going to continue to write books. I think I'll probably be writing more books than I've ever written. But the book I've just written on climate change, which is the truth about global energy a truth about energy, global warming, and climate change. And it's about exposing these lies, the climate lies, in this age of disinformation. That book is maybe one of the best I've written. It's very comprehensive. As a lot of the science shows you that the political philosophy of the global climate change movement is Malthusian. They want to kill people. It wants to destroy capitalism. It's become a Marxist theme. And the science is completely bogus. The idea that carbon dioxide, which is a trace molecule in the atmosphere, is the knob of the Earth's temperature, is ludicrous. And that book demonstrates it. Now, again, I think the point is these are interrelated issues, because as the climate agenda means that European nations quit using oil and natural gas, that they want to go to wind and solar, it's just not going to work. Electric vehicles are going to become a massive headache. They're expensive, they're heavy. The batteries rust, catch fire. They may cost $20,000 to replace a battery. The car runs out of juice. You can't roll it. It's just dead weight on the highway. The thing demands that you refuel it. Even if you refuel it just a little bit, you go on a 300-mile trip or decide you're going to drive a couple hundred miles in a day, you've got to really worry about how you're going to keep that vehicle going. And the energy is not efficient. The batteries are lithium. Batteries take raw materials that are very expensive to mine, these rare earth elements. And again, they use hydrocarbon fuels to produce the electricity, use hydrocarbon fuels to produce the minerals that go into the batteries. This is a boondoggle. It makes no economic sense. And hydrocarbon fuels are natural. One of the key premises of my book is that oil and natural gas are abiotic. They're not made from dinosaurs. They're a natural product of the earth. I explain how the Germans in World War II, before World War II, learned how to produce synthetic oil. They learned the equations that make synthetic oil. But a major theme is going to be that we're going to have this climate change continual drum roll that continues to put into effect measures that will restrain economic activity. And I think you've got to begin to see a couple of elements I've been talking about now for going on to 20 years. Number one is governments lie. They lie all the time. And they lie about some massive things, including this whole idea that carbon dioxide is a noxious chemical. We exhale carbon dioxide. They're almost saying we're suicidal. The problem that these climate, I believe, nutcases have is that this is the Anthropocene, and we're going to cause our own extinction. This whole movement developed out of the post-World War II Malthusians, people like Paul Ehrlich, Population Bomb, who said that book, which he said there's just too many people. And that where we're going with the New World Order is this transhumanism where the World Economic Forum and their machines can run the world, and the rest of us will be lucky to stay alive. This is a demonic era we're in, and it's got to be opposed. Now, I want to cover a third topic in this. We're going to try to keep these broadcasts here to about a half hour. We may expand them at times, but I think this is a good format. We're going to give it a try. Third topic I want to cover is this topic on the Ukraine war right now. And again, it's one that is written. This one is a direct Zero Hedge article byline Tyler Durden, who is the gentleman who runs this website. Zero Hedge is an excellent website for news aggregation. At any rate, what is happening now is that Russia has announced that essentially they're going to put tactical nuclear weapons into Belarus. Now, that's an Eastern European country. It means that Putin is expanding the war. I think this is a war that has been caused by going back to Soros, going back to the State Department. If you remember the Ukraine impeachment hearings for Donald Trump, we saw was going back to the Maidan revolution in 2014 in Ukraine. The State Department and Soros deposed a legitimately elected Russian-oriented president of Ukraine. Ukraine's a very complicated country. Half of it to the east is Russian. The other half to the west is mostly German. Even in World War II, the western part of Ukraine supported the Nazis. And many of these freedom fighters that Zelensky is utilizing today are Nazi organizations, which have Nazi symbols. They still believe in the Nazi racial theories. I mean, we've been fed more disinformation about Ukraine and Russia. I mean, I'm not a Putin fan, but the idea that you can deny Russia access to the Atlantic by bringing Ukraine into NATO and blocking Russia's access through the Mediterranean, through the Black Sea, into the Atlantic, or through Finland in the north to the Atlantic through the Baltic Sea is ridiculous. For hundreds of years, Russia has maintained the right to the sea, and even in the 1939 pact between Hitler and Stalin, Stalin took advantage of this and was moving troops into Finland and into Ukraine, also into Poland. These are natural buffer areas for these gigantic states. We're going into a three-polar world: China, Russia, and the United States. And China and Russia will each have their basically buffer zones, areas of influence, and Russia is going to assert influence over Eastern Europe. You're going to have China asserting influence over Japan, over Taiwan, which they eventually will take over. And the United States ought to be trying to protect the Western Hemisphere. Although I think between what's going on with the Biden family being bought and sold, owned by China, and an enormous number of our politicians are owned by China, including Mitch McConnell, his wife is Chinese and worth maybe $300 million in China. Well, the only reason her family continues to exist in China is because China likes what she's doing. Otherwise, that family wouldn't be around and she wouldn't have $300 million net worth in China, which means she's able to influence Mitch McConnell. And that was a theme I brought up when I did a presentation on my energy book at the Heritage Foundation, that the Heritage Foundation did not particularly like me presenting. But it's the truth. Peter Schweitzer's written extensively about it, as have others. But this movement to put now nuclear weapons in Belarus means that essentially Putin is not going to lose the war in Ukraine. Putin lost the war in Ukraine. He would lose his power in Russia. So that's out of the question. Now, if the Biden administration, which I believe is sending over billions of dollars in aid, largely which will be stolen, as Biden did, and I'm going to start writing about it again, when he was vice president, getting aid into the energy firm that his son was affiliated with in Ukraine. So we're going to see again billions of dollars being stolen and the currency of the United States being made fundamentally worthless. Now, the books I'm writing have more elaborate explanations of these themes. As I say, I'm going to be writing the articles more extensively. But if you want to know what's going on, I encourage you to follow us daily, and I encourage you to support our sponsors, take a look at them, and participate with us on this adventure, because we're going to do our part to get the truth out there. And I do believe that there will be a massive effort to stop Donald Trump from running again for president. And I do believe what was done recently by the Attorney General in New York to try to again prosecute him on these bogus charges with Stormy Daniels only raised Donald Trump's profile with the American people. And I believe that we're going to see Donald Trump reemerge again as a massive figure for the 2024 presidential election. I intend to remain a commentator. I'm not going to be actively involved with the campaign. I'm going to spend my time writing and doing podcasts to try to get the word out. And I want to thank you for joining us. Now, Chris, you have any concluding comments? You want to make a few comments about what we covered today? You got to turn your mic on, Chris.
What's going on? What's going on is I would say this, and a little glitch in the old microphone. See,
right,
when you're behind the scenes, sometimes you forget that button.
It's hey, first broadcast we've done together. It's gone fine. Don't worry about it.
And no one wanted to hear me me do the clicking and everything else and the typing.
Don't worry, leave it in. Don't exit it out. I like it.
I know, I'm good. But I will say this, Jerry. We had talked about the Belarus issue, and I remember some years ago, Belarus's president at the time, Belarus's president, same one, who was saying, "No, there's no way I'm going to let Putin involve himself in this country. We're going to be independent. We're a state. None of this now." All of a sudden, I guess it was after the Biden administration moved in. This is not very long after the Crimea thing. This is like that's during the Obama administration. But you looked at it, Belarus made a complete 180 turnaround. I just wanted to get to that a little before what happened in Ukraine. I'm guessing he was a little afraid of the same thing happening to Belarus, because it would be very easy for Putin to just walk all over Belarus rather than face those who are going to fight back in Ukraine. By the way, a lot of those have relatives who remember Holodomor and everything else. So there are a lot of issues when it comes to it. It's very complicated when it comes to the Ukraine situation. But Belarus, 180.
What Chris is referring to is when the Stalin in the 30s, on his collective farm issue, starved millions in Ukraine intentionally. The Russians went in and stole their food and killed them. And that's, again, the Russians and German antagonism and fighting over Ukraine. And that has not been forgotten. They call it the Holodomor. And that's known widely to anyone who knows about Ukraine. Putin's going to have a sphere of influence in political science. With my PhD's in political science from Harvard, that's what I was trained for. These massive global powers like the United States, Russia, and China each have a sphere of influence. And Russia's sphere of influence is Eastern Europe. They also have some strong interests in the Pacific. But again, their major sphere of influence is Western Europe, because they're actually on the continent with Western Europe. So they want a buffer zone. And and Taiwan is going to be in the same area of a buffer zone for China. Now, in the post-war era, United States power on the assertion of NATO has been able to restrain Russia and China as the United States becomes weaker, and we are self-destructing. This economic crisis is intentionally created. Federal Reserve, I think, is one of the worst things that Woodrow Wilson ever did. And I think he did many bad things, including World War I. But we'll get to those over time. At any rate, the point is this. Putin is exerting influence over Belarus, over the entire Eastern Europe. He's going to defend it. He's going to win in Ukraine. And our State Department, I guess, has turned against Russia because Russia was not communist after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And that just infuriates the communists in the State Department. That's been my basic theory about it all along. At any rate, this is Jerome Corsi and my producer, Chris. This is now a new website, The Truth Central. Today is Monday, March 27th, and we'll be with you again tomorrow. Thank you for joining us.